Be the Talk, episode 278, featuring Robert Coombs. Welcome to Be the Talk. We go behind the talk 7 days a week for tips and techniques to help you change the world. I'm Nathan Eckel, and a talker myself. I'm interviewing others who change the world with their talk. You can too, even if you've never given a talk before. Let's get started with today's show. We are live with Robert Coombs. Robert, are you ready to talk?
Absolutely. Lead the way.
Robert Coombs has a career spanning the nonprofit, political, and strategy industries. He is currently the COO of a fitness company. Robert Coombs, welcome to the talk.
Thanks so much for having me.
Your talk is called Is a Robot Standing Between You and Your Next Job? And I love this talk because basically you created a bot while you were in a transition period that we all go through. And this bot applied you to like 1,500 jobs, or at least a cover letter, using keywords, and none of it worked out at all. Because you basically, as you said, it's not what you know, it's who you know. So please take us behind the talk.
Yeah, that's exactly right. The talk really is the story behind what was a spectacular failure. I think that's one of the things that's a little counterintuitive. Everyone hears that I built a bot that applies to jobs. And in fact, it applied to thousands of jobs. And they think, okay, so this guy must have been getting job offers left and right. And the punchline of the story is, no, I actually didn't. And, maybe that's because I wasn't the perfect fit for some of those jobs. But the reality was actually something more serious and something that I thought was really interesting. And that is that when we apply online, when we submit those applications, so many of them are really going into digital dustbins. They're being sent into applicant tracking systems, which are just huge databases. And we're being pitted against hundreds, if not thousands, of other people that are competing for just a handful of positions. And so that's really where the story led me. It started out as a creative project, and it wound up being sort of investigative internet prank.
Oh, yeah. It's almost like, hey, what shall we name this ship? Internet best, and there are all kinds of ways that the internet works that kind of brings ire and wrath upon itself. I think the latest thing that was, I think, a statue that I saw in Savannah, Georgia, that someone had mutilated by putting googly eyes on, and I think that's the latest thing going around. But anyhow, what I love about this is, the statistical probability of getting a job is basically zero. And you prove that. You basically unveiled, the emperor has no clothes, the whole way that we've been all thinking that we need to go about doing a rite of passage every, multiple times a decade for many people is completely wrong. And I love how you just unveiled kind of the Wizard of Oz behind that machine and showed us all that it's not working. And then I also love that once you showed that, it opened the dialogue for all kinds of opportunities for you to dialogue and talk and connect with great industries and build a future for yourself. So what's your take on that whole piece? You really kind of expose something that isn't working and it's supposed to work, and it probably needs to be reformed.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the things that's interesting as people either see the talk, or this actually started out as an article in Fast Company, the response that I get is pretty consistent. And that is, people are saying, this is shocking, but not surprising. And it's something that a lot of us have been suspicious of for a long time. The number of times that you apply to a job, if you're lucky, you get an instantaneous response saying, thank you for applying to this job. And then months go by with total silence and no human interaction. On the other hand, most of the people that we talk to who are successful, if you ask them how they got their job, did they apply on LinkedIn? Did they submit their resume through the website? What did they do? The overwhelming majority of them say, no, I didn't do any of that stuff. I just networked. I knew someone, they knew me, and the rest is sort of history. And so the thing that I was really trying to set out here was an opportunity to just be honest about how that system works. I think that it is such a critical system. Right now, we just heard news that there are actual more job openings than there are people unemployed right now. But it's not always going to be the case. And that job market sometimes can be really, really difficult, especially if you're in a position like I was, where I was transitioning from leadership positions in nonprofits into where I really want to be, which is in the tech industry. And so if you're making a pivot like that, the deck is stacked against you. And you can't just rely on this system that people tell us works, but in reality is not set up for the individual job seeker. It's set up for the corporation that's seeking to hire lots and lots of candidates.
Robert, thank you so much, because I completely overlooked that glaring, obvious irony that we are right now at a historic, multi-generational low unemployment time. And so, I mean, actually, this may not have applied to when the article came out and when you actually did this. So how far back was that? And am I kind of putting things together that don't necessarily go together?
No. They totally do go together. I mean, the unemployment rate wasn't nearly as low, when I did this, as it is now. At the same time, I think that we know that that's something that goes in cycles. And we know that even when national trends are pointed in a positive direction, there are still certain populations that have a much harder time than others. And again, folks like me who are deciding that they want to do something different in their career. And so it doesn't matter that there's lots and lots of jobs out there. It means that you actually have to work harder to get that, because you have to demonstrate that you're competitive with other people who have exactly the pedigree that companies might be looking for.
Sure. So, I mean, let's talk practical steps, because this is, Be the Talk Universe. We're always, transitioning. There are always listeners that are looking at other options and whatnot. So, here's what doesn't work based on your work is inventing and programming a brilliant bot that can create and literally write your own cover letter and resume for you, and sending that out and thinking that that's going to get the job done. What does work other than putting a Fast Company blog that goes completely viral for all the right reasons? If we don't write the viral blog or do something that remarkable, what is the best way to go about it?
Well, so not everyone has the resources to do what I did and then tell their story in a national publication and then get a chance for a TEDx talk. But everybody does have the opportunity to do the things that led up to that for me, which is to take stock of their skills, to try and be the very best that they can in their area, and then to share that success, share those skills in as many different venues as you can. The reality is, whereas applying online really doesn't work in any sort of statistical fashion, there are a lot of small companies who do look at every single resume, and certainly when I was hiring, I looked at every resume that I could. But the reality is, when you're looking at larger companies, that's just not the way that it happens. But those companies love a good story. They love someone who's generous with their time, who can come in and solve problems. And so that's really the key to this, is figure out what you're great at, figure out how you tell that story, and then talk to people in the companies that you want to be at and demonstrate the value that you can bring.
It's so interesting because what you're basically saying, Robert, is that situational awareness and emotional intelligence, outranks the tech and the savvy and the programming and all of that. We're seeing this trumping of the technology with just old fashioned sensibility. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, the type of candidate that companies are looking for is different in different types of jobs. One thing that I'll say is, especially if you're looking for a leadership role, being able to demonstrate that you think differently, that when you encounter a problem, you don't just say like, okay, so I've hit a full stop. You think about how you can go over, around, under, through. Honestly, that's how the sort of bot came to be. But the reality is that's just kind of the way that I think. And it's the thing that sort of led to a number of opportunities where people recognize, we don't need the same old style of thinking. That's what got us here. We're trying to get to a different place. So we need someone who's going to come in with a creative perspective and and sort of take risks, but take smart ones.
Well, we've been enjoying this interview with Robert Coombs. His talk is called "Is a Robot Standing Between You and Your Next Job?" And I believe the Fast Company article that he wrote was titled similarly to that. We've been enjoying this, and we're going to enjoy even more information, helpful information from Robert as we continue in just a moment with the Blitz Round. Hey, Talk Universe. I hope you've been enjoying today's episode with today's guest. But you know what? Many people want more than that. Many people that listen to Be the Talk actually want to give a talk. And if that's you, you're not alone. Listen to the rest of this podcast. At the end, I'll have a free resource for you just for listening. And we're back with the Blitz Round with Robert Coombs. I'm going to ask Robert a series of either-or questions related to the preparation and performance of his recent talk. Robert, are you ready?
Ready to go.
First question, were you invited to speak or did you apply?
I was invited. I got a note from one of the organizers of TEDx Bratislava, way off in the distance.
And where is that?
Bratislava, it's in Slovakia.
Slovakia,
it was a spectacular conference organized at the Slovak National Theater. Really beautiful opera hall with 1,000 people. So I thought, how could I say no to this?
Nice. Well, tax deductible mini vacation, perhaps, or I'm not a tax expert, but
they took care of everything. I really had. I didn't have to worry about anything.
Well, it's good to write viral blog posts based on brilliant ideas that you had, for sure. So how did you prepare, Robert? Are you a memorizer, an improviser, or a blender?
This really required me to step outside of my comfort zone. I like to be sort of dynamic when I speak. I like to work with the audience, get feedback, and sort of move accordingly. But I couldn't do that for this. They asked me to hit the 16-minute mark. They asked me to hit it on the dot. And so that required working on a script, making sure that it was tight, making sure that I was as good as possible. And honestly, memorizing a script is terrifying to me. But they did a really great job in working alongside me, making sure that the slides were going to be timed perfectly. And I almost hit my 16-minute mark. I came in at 15 minutes and 44 seconds.
On the dot. I've never heard of on the dot. I mean, I feel like pulling our other guests in here, which I won't do, but on the dot, usually shorter is better because everyone goes a little over or a lot over. And so I've never heard of on the dot before.
Well, listen, they did such an incredible job of organizing it. Everything was so tight. The agenda was packed, and I just wanted to be respectful of all of the work that they had put in by doing my best to hit my marks.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, what a testimony to the caliber of not just what they're attempting to do, but what they're able to do year in, year out. I'm sure. So, Robert, what's the tip, tool, or technique that helps you prepare? This is a little unusual, but I mean, in general, or for this, what's a tip, tool, or technique?
Well, I'll tell you something that I did that's a little bit different. And this is sort of, me coming up with my own life hacks. I actually, because I had to have a script and because I needed to hit that mark, I actually wrote it all out. And then I used my iPhone to read it back to me. So you know how you can make Siri read text to you? I had Siri read it back to me. So now I had written it out. I had read it. I'm seeing it visually, and now I'm hearing it. And so getting that full sort of immersion into the talk helped me to figure out exactly what the timing was, exactly what things that I wanted to enunciate and put a finer point on. And I think that's really what allowed me to memorize it in a way that generally I just don't do.
Well, Talk Universe, we've been enjoying this excellent Blitz round with Robert Coombs. And if you want to find out more about him, you can go to our website, BeTheTalk.com. In the show notes page, we will have a link to his talk, Is a Robot Standing Between You and Your Next Job? And we will also have a link to Robert's LinkedIn page right there for you. And in just a moment, we're going to be right back with Robert Coombs for the final word of advice for Talk Universe. Hey, Talk Universe, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you want to give the talk to change the world, but you don't know how or even where to start, no problem at all. Go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted for my new 5-day email course that'll show you how. Absolutely free. Just go to BeTheTalk.com/get accepted. And it is time to come back for the final word of advice for Talk Universe from Robert Coombs. What is it?
So the best advice that I can give to folks giving TEDx talks is to just enjoy your co-speakers, share the joy of that experience. Everyone's having a really great time, and really be present for that and be grateful. This is an opportunity to share, in my case, share my story with 1,000 people who couldn't be happier to hear all of the different stories that were being told that day.
Awesome. Well, Robert Coombs, thank you so much for coming on the talk today, sharing your wisdom with Talk Universe.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Be the Talk. For tips and resources to help you change the world, go to BeTheTalk.com. See you tomorrow.